Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. This is the Chester County Beekeepers Association of Pennsylvania's Women's Bee Group Speaker Series, and tonight we are pleased to welcome David Westervelt. David Westervelt is the technical consultant for VitaBee Health North America, and they are the makers of Apigard and VarroxSan and Apistan. Before taking the position with VitaBee, David worked for nearly 30 years with the Florida Department of Agriculture as an environmental specialist, a state apiary inspector, and chief of apiary inspection. He was involved in some of the first studies on Varroa destructor mites and has also worked on research projects studying American foulbrood, small hive beetles, and nosema. He has more than 55 years of experience in beekeeping. David also serves as VP of Bees Beyond Borders, and he is coming to us tonight, as Carissa mentioned, from Barbados, where he is currently offering training programs in conjunction with the Barbados Apiculture Association. And I understand some of those members are here with us tonight, so welcome to all of you. I will mute myself and my video, and David, take it away. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
So I'm Dave Westervelt. I've been playing with honeybees for over 55 years. And like y'all said, we're down here in Barbados enjoying our last evening before we get to jump in a flight and then go back to Florida. I spend about 2 days there, and I turn around and go back up to New Jersey to EAS. So I'm probably going to see a bunch of y'all up there. But I am the technical consultant for VITA, as I call it, Bee Health North America. And I do work some of the Caribbean area also. And so my phone number is on here. So if y'all have any questions or anything about any of our products, please feel free to give me a call. So part of VITA, and if you look at VITA, VITA is a huge, it's the largest dedicated veterinarian supply company in the world, but it's also in Europe, most of your veterinarians are the ones that prescribe mite treatments, American foul brood treatment, European foul brood treatments, where we're just starting to see veterinarians here in the United States having to do that because of the veterinarian fee directive. And so what VITA has done is we, just gone out there with grand ideas and looked at things and tried to establish teams and people to work together. So we work all over the world getting new products to come to the market. And that's where, even going back to Apigard, which was one of our first products for mite treatments. So some of the things we do have available are your swarm attractants. We have EFB and AFB diagnostic kits. They were out of stock for a little while. We've got them coming back into stock. They should be available, if not already at your bee suppliers. They should be available by August. And then we got the Sertan, as I know it. And the Sertan, actually, B4402, it's out there available to beekeepers. It's the old Sertan wax moth treatment, controlled by virtually it's wax moth consuming it and controlled the larva. So it works great. Your swarm commanders work real great. They work excellent. Fumagillin, we lost it for a little while. It's back in. It's produced here actually in Canada. And so it works on both Nosema cerana and Nosema apis. Nosema cerana is a little different. When you think about Nosema, we used to always worry about it hitting bees that went through the winter. So it never bothered people in the South that much. But now what we're seeing is Nosema apis did that. Nosema cerana, when it came in, it starts hitting our bees in the summertime. So it can be a problem. Using Fumagillin, it is available. So we can actually use it. It's a product. Most of the people, it's not for a backyard or a sideline beekeeper. It's more commercial size. So the biggest problem that we have in honeybees throughout the world is Varroa destructor. I remember I went back to Australia about 14, 15, almost 20 years ago, I guess. I was doing a talk over there, and my talk was on Varroa jacobsoni. And Dewey probably remembers when we had everything was Jacobsoni. And then all of a sudden, some Australian researchers changed the name on it to Varroa destructor because it's a different genotype, I guess you could say. And so I get over there to do a talk on the wrong mite, but they ended up with Varroa jacobsoni about 10 years ago. Now they've got Varroa destructor also. So they've got both, but they're very limited to where they're at. So Vita is working very hard on that, trying to control Varroa mites, trying to use more of a organic treatment. So biggest thing that you need to do is know what your mite levels are at. So when you're out in your bee yard, before you have your decision of making, should we treat for mites or should we, not treat, you need to have a good method of checking them. So we have Varroa check, and it's virtually self-contained, everything in it. You got a little measuring scoop, a little basket. You can use alcohol in it. Works real well and gives you a fairly accurate ratio to whether you're 3 mites to 100. So it's very easy to use. It doesn't take a rocket scientist. That works well. So our Apigard, if any of y'all have been around long enough, Apigard originally came out in blue containers. The U.S. treatment, because it's organic and very effective, we changed the little containers to going to green. That way we could tell there's one actual ingredient that was done in Europe, but not allowed in here in the United States. And it wasn't something that affected the Apigard, but we couldn't have it in the product. So ours are green, shows that they're organic. So we know if somebody's using a blue one, they came in from somewhere else in the United States. So it's still a very good treatment. You definitely want to look at temperature range. It says there 104 degrees, but we know if your humidity and your temperature is up in the high 90s, you don't want to try to use a full dose. So Apigard still works very well, and we haven't had very many problems. So these are the frequently asked questions on it. If you're applying it, you normally go back every 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, and apply it again 50 grams. If you're in a smaller hive, you can go to 225 treatments. Same thing if you're in a nuke or if your hive colony is small. So if you're using a double or a story and a half, you may want to put part 25 grams in the top, 25 in the bottom. Be sure to use the little pieces of cardboard. They actually work as a wick. They're supplied with the tubs. They're supplied also with the other ones out there. So be sure to use them. If you don't, the gel just slides down and goes away. So this is actually something that is frequently asked about adding Apigard and like feeding, stimulation. The trials that we did actually showed that there was a fairly decent increase in growth in honeybees that had both Apigard and were being, patties or extender patties, protein patties, whatever ones you were using. They increased your production in bee numbers and made a healthier hive. We know that Apigard causes bees to be hygienic for that time while it's in there. And it lasts probably about 2 weeks after you still find the, smell of thymol in there. So one of the older treatments that we got in back in 2000 or no 19 probably 89, I think, was when we finally got Apistan. We were using a section 18 in 91, and Apistan is still an effective treatment as long as you know whether or not your mites are resistant. We know that there's areas where, if you haven't treated or nobody's treated, and I hear it all the time, oh, my bees are resistant. It's not your bees. Your bees are not the one that you're targeting. It's the mites you're targeting. So when you're treating with the Apigard, you got to know whether or not there's a couple different tests you can do. One's a modified Pettis test that shows you whether or not using about a 1 inch piece of the strip, hanging it into a pint jar with about 300 bees, knowing that they have mites on them, and see if they fall within that time period. You can Google Pettis uh, test and see how it's done. It can be modified to fit your needs. So this is actually showing the evaluation if you were to, use Apistan, whether it was us, your uh, mites were able to be killed or resistant. So what actually shows is when you used one treatment, the ratio of how your Maine and in Valencia. And this is actually a study that was your first treatment. Now, these are one treatment, not like in Florida where we treat 4 and 5 times. This is one treatment the first year, and it shows just this actually shows if you stop treating, whoops, actually on the wrong one. This shows your efficacy. The distance takes about 6 years to really, so your mites are no longer resistant to it. So our newest product that's been out for a little over a year and a half now is VarroxSan, which VarroxSan is a fiber strip. It looks like cardboard. So when you use it, it is also organic. It's using a natural product. Uh, actually hang it in the strip where your PE, and you would bend it and, holding the frame into the hole. You definitely want to target into the, not lay the strips on top. We've already had beekeepers that are saying, oh, we didn't get any efficacy. We just laid 4 strips on top of the brood nest. The problem is when you lay a strip up there, your contact area goes to about 1/10 of the percent. So you're not going to get a treatment. We had beekeepers already slide them in the entrance. That does not work. You've got to place them where the young bees, where the varroa mites are at. It's not a vapor, it's a contact. So this is actually what the strips are made up as. They've got roughly about 18.5% oxalic acid. The strips, like it says, 2.5 frames per bees, and not brood, 2.5 frames for bees. So when you're looking at a strong hive of bees and it's got maybe looks like it's 20 frames, as Dr. Jamie Ellis always says, push them so they're side by side and shoulder to shoulder, and then compare that frame that looks like it's fully packed. It'll probably go down to a half. So you should have a normal hive, real strong hive, you're going to end up between 3 and 4 strips in them. The treatment dates are 42 to 56 days, 6 to 8 weeks. We've already tried to use a high dose of actually over 1.5 times. So not only was it 1.5 times the strips, but we've gone to 1.5 times the manufacturer product in it. So it's manufactured under our standards. So that's the nice part about it, as opposed to a homemade strip that does not have a control on it. One thing with the homemade strips that people are using, the different towels and stuff, you don't have the ability to control the heat exactly on oxalic acid. And if you can get it over its one temperature, you're making a total different acid out of it. So that's why this, we know it stays at 18.4. And as it's being used, it actually disperses at that treatment level. So after the strips have been in, most of the times you'll see that they chew some of the cardboard out. Sometimes you look into a hive and they cut it across and the strip drops down. At that time, I would actually, if it's 2 to 4 weeks in, I would put a new strip in, replace it. The bees will normally not remove the whole strip. One thing you can do is if you're looking at the hive, place the strips in the middle of the brood nest where the bees are at. Don't place them to the front edge or the back edge, trying to, get them away from maybe your queen. Just make sure they're in the brood nest near the young bees. If you come along and you look at your hive and it was at 6 frames of bees, so you put 2.5 strips or 2 strips in, now you need to put the third one in, that's perfectly legal. You can do that. Or if it goes from 8 to 10, you can move up to 4 strips. You can add them within the time. So the nice thing are the differences between the Alucap and the our VarroxSan strips. Everybody says they look the same. Actually, ours is an impregnated strip that releases at the same rate. It's 18.4, and theirs is actually 30% more acid and doesn't give the efficacy that ours did. So actually, ours is better. This is actually the summary of the 95.5%, where we're showing different tests we did throughout different countries. And there's actually one in there from Washington State that was done, they got 92%. The rest of them are pretty much foreign countries, but it works very well. We've done very well with it. This is actually a study that was done in 21-22, showing the difference between VarroxSan and Apivar. And VarroxSan knocked the mites way down, where Apivar, they kept growing. So it did not work. So on efficacy, we compared a couple different strips, Formic Pro, oxalic homemade strip pads, then homemade strip pads #2, that these were Swiss pads that he came out with. And we were actually looking at the size, evaluating the cluster size, and seeing if the mites actually dropped. And when you compare the VarroxSan to the Formic Pro, your mite final count was, we actually were down to 0. It was 0.9, so it's 1 really. But we had a very good control on these. And we're seeing people that are putting them in now. Most of the time, it takes about 10 to 15 days to get you down to your controlled level. But we're actually seeing where people are putting them in and having high mite drops the first 72 hours. So it's very interesting on those. But at the end of the 56th day, uh, we get down to virtually no mites detectable. So we hear sometimes that beekeepers talk about the oxalic strips. They're talking about the Alucap, that it just keeps them steady. They don't drop down to 0, but they don't rise up anymore. With VarroxSan, you can get your strips down to 0, or your mites down to 0. So this is actually showing the honey collection, and we had no problem with our oxalic acid. They did actually, this is very blurry one for me, but we had no problem, and bee population and varroa load dropped. So these are some of the frequently asked questions. So this is actually telling you how many strips per frames of bees, and it's 2.5 frames of bees per strip. So if you jump up to 6 frames, you're at 3 strips. If you're in a double deep or a story and a half, you can, on a story and a half, if you're having to hang a strip in it, you'll go over 2 frames. It just makes it a lot easier to hang that strip. If you go over just one, it's going to poke up because of the way the 6 5/8 frames are. So hang them over, 2 frames. And if you're doing regular deeps, bend them over one frame or, lap them over and do it dead in the center of the hives. Do not reuse, follow the label. And that's always a big thing, following the label. Uh, the when you receive your strips and everything, we always get asked, well, can I put too many strips in? Normally you can't, but keep it to what the recommended dose is. If you're going to have 4 VarroxSan strips in the lower, you can put the second chamber on when the bees come up, put 2 strips up there. So you can use VarroxSan when the strips are you got supers on. We would prefer you not to, because it's you're increasing the area in the beehive. So your older bees are, coming and going, but your younger bees are now going up to the top. So, it's harder to treat that whole area. So it's better to treat them, early in the spring or late in the fall, to control your mites and then get them through spring. And if you have to, you can treat with honey super, or while they're making honey or bringing nectar in. The honey can be collected. It can be used for human consumption or fed back to the bees. Pretty much all honey has the active ingredient already in it. So oxalic acid is naturally occurring there. So uh, do you have to remove the strips? Yes. Why do the bees actually move away from the strips? We get told all the time that, oh, I put the strips in and the bees moved away. They don't want to lay there. Well, if you put that strip in there, you've just lost your bee space. So the queen can't bend and go in behind there. So the brood that hatches out from there, she can't get back into there to lay. The young nurse bees, they'll try to cut away and get so there's more room there, but because the strip's in the way, it doesn't work very well. You will see sometimes that the bees move away from the strip, and that's because it's a contact strip. So they will move. Go into your hive if you only got 1 or 2 hives about every 2 weeks and check it. If they moved away from your strip, you can move that strip right to where the bees are, reposition it. So, uh, uh, yeah, sometimes you actually strips disappear. I think I've already talked about that. You can use VarroxSan in hot weather. We try to, say because it is an acid, we want to back off, but it's better to use it in the wintertime and springtime. But it has been used at high temperatures with no ill effects. So there's no residue, no different than regular honey. So you can use it in nucleuses. We say that if you're using a 5-frame nuke and you got 3 frames of bees in there, put 1 strip in. Once it's grown, 2 weeks later, you may put the second one into there. Same thing, we've got beekeepers that use 6 5/8 boxes. So they've got a 10-frame box or a 9-frame box that they make up into, instead of a deep nuke box, they use it, and they will use 1 strip going over 2 frames. So this is actually storage of the VarroxSan, should be around 86 degrees or less. Don't go throwing it into your vehicle and letting it overheat. And it should last to the expiration date, no problem. You can seal that bag back up. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Fold over the top. Use some beekeepers friendly tape called duct tape and seal it back up. There's no problem. So any questions? We've actually run through this fairly good, and I don't think we've had any bad problems, but any questions? So we will open it up to questions.
And now if anybody has questions, now I see questions in the chat. Would if anybody would like to just take themselves off, David prefers that you just ask him directly. So just feel free to take yourself off mute and ask away. Regina, you want to start?
Sure. Dave, any thought of actually putting a zip tie top on it instead of because it's really hard to kind of close it up. There's not a lot of headspace there in that bag. So trying to close it up, there's not much room to be able
You can wrap it in another Ziploc bag and you should be able to, if you can find the 2-gallon Ziploc bags, it fits into those and just make it as tight as you can. Or you can take another Ziploc bag and, keep it in that white bag that it comes in because that seems to help it last longer. But any plastic will work. So.
Yeah, I
Greg,
tried to
you have your hand up?
I'm sorry. I was going to say I tried to
Oh, sorry,
vacuum,
Regina.
but the
Go ahead.
liquid came out.
They shouldn't have any liquid coming out of it.
Yeah, I had red liquid when I vacuum sealed it. I had red liquid coming out. I tried to vacuum seal in a
Oh,
vacuum.
you try. Okay, yeah, no, yeah, that's weird too. Even vacuum sealing it, you shouldn't have had red liquid coming out of the oxalic acid part because it's impregnated into a top secret item that it shouldn't come out, but it does release. So I can't say. I'll have to ask my R&D person, see if he's ever had anybody do the vacuum seal. So good question. Good thing for me to talk about. Find out.
Okay, how about we go to Charlie first because he's off mute, and then we'll go to Greg next.
All right. For AprilGuard, you were talking about humidity. Is that a major problem with that product or not? Or just watch your
No,
temperatures?
yeah, temperature is the main thing because most of our research that's ever been done on AprilGuard, and I started day one doing research in Florida with it and in Georgia. And so humidity, because AprilGuard is still a contact and vapor. So it's both of them. That's why it's very important to have that piece of cardboard that either is shipped with it, which is nothing more than a Chinese takeaway top, or a piece of whatever you put underneath it. That's
Yeah.
the most important part. Just
No, I
don't.
mean, I applied it actually yesterday, but I did 25 grams and the temperature here for the next several days there's going to be right around the mid 80s.
Yeah, you should be fine, Charlie. What you'll see actually is if you put it down in the brood nest and you've got supers or anything that they're coming up into, you'll find out that they control that brood nest area and the humidity always pretty much the same. So what you get when you put that smaller dose in there is they start cleaning out. They go hygienic. So
Cleaning out the product, you mean?
no, they
Correct.
clean out debris and stuff that's in there.
Oh, okay.
They
All
go
right.
hygienic on you.
Yeah, far as the 50-gram dose, is that where, like on the instructions say, it has to be below 77 degrees? There's seems to be a lot of opinion, whether it's 30 grams, 35 grams, 50 grams.
Right. We tested all the way up. Normally, our main test was at 50 grams, and we went up to 96 degrees in Florida and about 99% humidity. Once we got it into that 50 grams, we started seeing bees leave out. That's why anything in the 70s and 80s, we had no major problem. As long as the humidity wasn't 100%, that's where bees just can't naturally keep that moisture. They try to keep it at 50% in the brood nest. So
Right. I mean, I have opinions like with Formic Pro where I feel like humidity intensifies any fumigant in the brood nest. All right. All right. Well, thank you very much.
all right, thank you, Charlie.
Go ahead, Greg.
Okay, Dave, I was just at our PA state meeting, and there was supposed to be somebody talking about the new strips, but she didn't make it or he didn't make it. But our state inspectors were taking questions, and the one inspector, I'm almost sure I heard him correctly, that using these new strips will not reduce my mite count. And yet
He's wrong on that, Greg. Yeah,
your
he's
earlier
wrong on that.
Okay, well that's because I just did my wash today, and I don't know if you're an advocate. I used the Dawn liquid mix. I was counting 7 to 9 mites.
Right,
and I was
300 bees, or what's your?
I'm sorry.
how many bees were how many bees were you using, Greg? Were you
I
using like
did the
half a cup, which is 300 bees?
about 300
Yeah,
bees.
so
Yeah.
300 bees, and you were getting 9 mites, so you're at about 3 mites per 100 bees. So you're needing
Yep.
to start looking at doing a treatment. So, and
Well, that's what I
VarroxSan
don't
does knock
understand.
them down. Yeah.
I
Well,
don't. Can you explain how this started, that it won't knock them down? Because it's like the
That's the
second or
out.
third time.
It comes from the other strip that was out there, the Alucat.
that's what I'm wondering,
Yeah.
because
And
David, it's not the first time
yeah,
that I've heard this, that people are saying, oh, it's not a knockdown, it's not a knockdown. And then, but you've, like, according to your charts and your data, it shows very clearly that it's a knockdown. So I think you're right, David, that it's, people were getting
There's-
confused by those
they're
other
getting
strips.
confused with the homemade strip and the Alucat. There were people that were bringing in Alucat, and it will keep your level constant. It doesn't drop them down. In the homemade strips, they're up and down all over the board because there's no good product management on it. So yeah, our VarroxSan strip definitely drops the mite level. So what you can
Glad
do
to hear.
is
So tomorrow I'm going back to the apiary. I'm going to put the strips on.
yeah, go to the apiary, Greg, and you already know your mite level number. How many hives are you running to?
I'm backyard beekeeper. I've got a total of 5.
5 hives. So what
And
you could do, if you got a couple extra days, stick a sticky board underneath them, get your natural fall, see how many mites you get in 3 days, so 72 hours. Then stick new sticky boards into there and put them in there for 72 hours with your strip applied and see what your number of mites are. With the strips
Dave,
placement.
I've heard this term sticky board, but I'm clueless
Okay.
of how to use them or where to use them. So
Do you have screen
I
bottom
got
boards or?
solid bottom board.
Solid bottom boards, and you would
All of
actually need a dwell board. That's a little different. So
Okay.
using your mite wash, if you're getting the bees from the brood nest, from emerging bees, that are emerging out of brood, you should have a fairly accurate, number. And so you should be, on that case, you can't get it in 72 hours. It takes you about 15 to 16 days before you'll see that drop. And it's just because it takes about 15 to 18 days for your mites that have gone into the brood to start coming back out and get treated. 80% of your mites are in your cap brood. So it just takes that amount of time. So you don't kill them.
And this particular hive is the 2 queen keeper hive that George has put out.
Yeah.
The keeper. So I'm working with 8 frames in my
8 frames.
brood box, and I took his recommendation, and I was pulling the frames 3 and 4, which did have some emerging brood with some young larvae in there. So I'm thinking my sample's pretty good. But I'm definitely going back tomorrow, and I received my strips today.
Yep.
And the only complaint I would have is it's hard to read the label because you have to hold it sideways. And I'm thinking once I open it, I might be able to do it a little better.
Yeah, you got the 20 pack, right? You didn't get a 60 pack, so it's a little harder.
No, I got this 20 pack.
Yeah, so it is
All
a
right.
little hard. Yeah.
I appreciate your insight, and I'll go on mute and wait for more questions and listen.
Thank you.
So David, would that be the same case if you had someone had a really high mite count, say a drop of 30 or something like that? I mean, just use that number, but
yeah, it takes on something with 30, it's going to take, probably around 20, 21 days to get that massive drop. And where you can see it at is if you stick your sticky boards under there, you'll see the massive mite drop. They're not able to go back in. But when you're doing a mite check, where you're taking bees and everything, you're not getting them an accurate because you're taking it from the brood that's emerging out. So that's where it ends up.
And next question is, what is the decision factor whether to use 42 to 62 days?
Well, it's when you go into there and you've done your 42 or 56 days. You go into there and you've done a check at 42 days. If you think, well, my mite level should be down to 0, you can stick a sticky board under there. You can, do a mite wash, a powdered sugar. I don't like using powdered sugar because the accuracy of it isn't quite, is what I'd like. So alcohol wash 300 bees is what I like to do. And your level should be to either non-detectable or very close. If it's not non-detectable, let's say you started at 15 or 18 mites in 300 bees, and your level is down to 2 mites in a 300, you probably want to leave them in until 56 days and then take them out. You're better to do the 56 days than to pull them out and have, 1 or 2 mites still in there. It's not 1 or 2 mites. If you're doing a 300 count, there's probably 5,000 mites still left in the hive. So there is a mathematical equation to figure that out. But my brain's not there tonight. No. So
Do you need to use gloves or wear gloves while touching the strips?
it's preferred that you use PPE, which would be your nitrile gloves.
Okay.
So wearing your long sleeve shirt and stuff, that's just to keep your bees from stinging you. It does say to wear eye protection. Regular glasses are considered eye protection. So if you're like me, I've got to put on my reading glasses to see anything. So that works. But yeah, you're good to have your gloves. And
Okay. And
So-
next, I'm reading the questions in the chat, but it sounds like somebody unmuted. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I had a question about using in areas where reinfestation happens a lot. So in my area, there's a lot of beekeepers, there's a lot of bees, which is great, but it also means that I can treat my hives, get them down to 0 mites, come back a week later, and there's a lot more mites. Usually also a lot more honey, especially in the fall as they rob out colonies that have collapsed. Would it be viable to treat with a couple of doses of Apiguard and then put these new strips in afterwards, or would you recommend just doing a lot more of the VarroxSan strips?
anytime you can rotate chemicals, integrated pest management is a thing that I press all the time. So what I'd say, Eli, is actually, do your treatment, give it, if it's like Florida, we have more beekeepers than we got anything else. And yes, you do get reinfested fairly fast here. So do a treatment with Apiguard, maybe do that in your springtime, and then turn around when you're still making honey. You can then jump into there. If you see your mite level rising, drop in the VarroxSan strips. And
Sounds good. Thank you.
making sure you check what your mite load is very important. So next
question is from Howard. He says this time of year he might have 4 8-frame mediums. How should he treat?
with medium, so he's talking 6 5/8. I would make sure where your brood nest is. If even in a medium, they're normally in the middle. But I would see how many bees you got into there, and you got to remember to push them down. Tighten them up. You don't have to physically do that, but when you're trying to figure out how many bees are in there, figure out 1 frame, and on a medium, because they're not 9 inches long, you're actually going to, even if it was fully across there, you're to about 4.5 frames. So 2 strips per. And if they're full of bees, not full of honey. So if you're like most, if you've got 3 or 4 6 5/8 supers or mediums, it'll end up that they have that same brood nest size as a 10 frame deep. So it's still about the same number of strips in it. So I would go with 4, 2 in top, 2 in, it would have to be your decision on how many you're going to use, but your number of frames of bees are what you're looking at.
Good to know. And Anne Fry asks, what is the max number of strips for a real strong double deep? I've seen 6, but also 4 per 10 frames of bees in each brood chamber.
You can go up to whatever number, it says 4 is what most typical hives are. But if you've got a hive that's got 20 frames of brood, you might have, or 20 frames of bees, it's almost impossible for a queen to lay 20 frames of brood. But so if you've got that 20 frames of bees, you may end up having to put 6 or 7 strips into there. And, but it could be very, you know, a super strong hive like that, you may end up having 2 queens in it a lot of times, mother-daughter queens that are laying. And so it's a
Interesting.
numbers game again, number of eggs a queen can lay compared to number of days of gestation to long, how many days they live. So, okay, next one.
Okay. Paula asks, I just finished a VarroxSan treatment and all of my hives had lower mite levels, all of my hives that had lower mite levels, most were 0 to 2 mites per 300 bee sample. The treatment worked very well. I was also under the same impression that they would keep levels constant, so I was pleasantly surprised. The treatment time was about 54 days, so that's good. Yeah, I'm actually surprised pleasantly as well that it is a knockdown, or it can be used for a knockdown, because I've heard the same thing. And I think the label does say that too. It doesn't say knockdown, but the label does say it could be used for high mite levels.
Right. It can be used. We know that you can have 30, 40 mites, and it's hard to find bees anymore that show 30 or 40 mites in a wash or a roll, as I'm used to calling it. But at that number, we had a lady that she called and said the strips weren't working anymore. They didn't work. And so we rushed over, because anytime you have a product failure, we have to go look and see what it was. So she had already pulled the strips out. She'd done the 56 days, and we checked the mite load. And yeah, she was running about a 15 mite level per 100 bees, fairly high number. And
Wow.
so she was actually sticking sticky boards in and getting a mite natural fall. And she'd just done a 72-hour mite count, and it was fairly high, pretty well matched what we were seeing. And she says the strips aren't working. So we had one of our researchers that works with me. We placed strips in the way they were supposed to be. And I noticed when we were putting the strips in, you could see where her strips had been in the front part of the hive, not where the brood nest was, where the brood nest, but not where the young bees, right at the front. You could see 2, and 1 in the back. She'd been putting 3 in. And so when we put them in, she was amazed. The next morning, she had over 5,000 bites
Oh
on
my
her sticky
gosh.
board throughout. So she was like, wow, that's a massive. And she says, I actually put them in wrong. And I said, yeah, knowing that you got to put those strips, she said she didn't want to hurt the queens. So I said, you got to place them where the young bees are at. If you don't want to try to force them down through the hole, and they slide down into there fairly easy, pull the frame up, bend it over, and put it in on both sides and drop it back in. Those are very easy to do. So next question or statement. I like those statements like that.
So, Harry asks, with Apigard or Apigard, do you remove the entrance reducer and close off the bottom board?
That's temperature and humidity. I still like to, we ran bottom boards, solid bottom boards, and we ran entrance reducers year round in Florida. Never had a problem. Our entrance reducers were 1 inch on each side. So we ran those and used Apigard for going on about 25 years now. And in some of the times when it was super hot, we also used it in combination where we would treat with one of the things like either amitraz or fluvalvinate, which was your Apigard, and then use the product and got an excellent. We just did a research project that's completed. I don't know if they published it yet, but using the thymol or Apigard and the strip, and it showed that it got a very high knockdown. So very good treatment on that. But I don't know that we've released that yet. It's supposed to be published. So next question.
Great. Beth asks, if the temperatures increase into the mid-90s partway through treatment, will that hurt the bees?
No, I would not worry about it because your bees are going to thermal regulate where your strips are at. They're going to maintain that 94.5 degrees roughly and about 50% humidity. That's why you don't place them up in the honey supers, because that honey super is going to be ambient temperature. So pretty much. And there's a lot more moisture. That's something else that I need to put out, that if you're using them and you're having moisture drop in the hive, it can drop on those strips, and that does create a little bit of a problem we're finding. So try not to, if you have a feeder jar top or a hole in the top of your lid, don't place a strip right underneath that. So
Okay. Doreen asks, it may be basic, but might check each hive, or can I assume from 1 or 2 hives that all should be treated?
if they're in your yard, and it matters how big your yards were. We ran most of our yards when I was a young kid and up to when my son sold the business. We ran 96 hives. We would always do 10% of the yard to make sure that we were getting a very good number. And if, like my son now still does consulting, if it's less than 10 hives, he checks every hive. And
Yeah.
it's just so much easier to do that. And you know, pretty much if one hive in the operation, in that yard shows 3 or 4 mites, they're pretty much all going to be about the same. So,
Yep. Mark asks, can you use Formic and VarroxSan simultaneously?
we have not done that, mainly because we haven't got good results with Formic. Oxalic has worked a lot better, especially in Florida. Florida in the South, fuming it in anything that we've tested has not given us the efficacy that we want. And so we're not pushing Formic. We actually just completed a study on packages using the VarroxSan and using the strips in packages, and that went very well. So that's good news. We're now looking at, some people say, well, we need to treat the queens. Dewey probably remembers this back when queens were shipped, back when we had the EAS, or that was the Eastern Apiculture agreement actually for the inspection program. And they all queens shipped throughout, from Florida, Georgia, anywhere, had to have a little piece of a tab of a mite strip in them. So they were normally fluvalvinate, which was apistan. So, yep. Hope that answered that question.
Regina points out that Apigard instructions says open the front entrance. She killed the colony by reducing the front entrance.
Yeah, you shouldn't reduce it down, plug it all the way down. We do fairly well, like I said, with now we use 2 entrances, so they're drawing air in and stuff. And if it's super hot, you want to drop it to 25 grams. And super hot being anything over that 89 degrees, roughly, I think it is. So.
Last question. Anne asks, could the PETIS test be used for VarroxSan like it's been used for Apistan, Apivar, and other contact miticides?
Yes, it can. And I've actually done it. So just by what I did was using your gloves and stuff, take a good pair of shears, cut the strips into 1-inch strips, hang them, poke a hole in them, ice pick if you know where you can find an ice pick, and hang them with I use a paper clip, and make sure you're using the screen jar, and it seems to work very well. And the thing is, you've got to place those jars so they're in the shade, and you got to allow them about 3 minutes or 3 hours of sitting there with what I'm seeing with the VarroxSan. So Apigard, you can't do it. I've tried to think of ways I could do it. I may try something with Apigard to see, but we haven't had resistance with it. But
And that is it for the chat. I'll leave it open if people want to unmute and ask questions, ask more questions.
David, I did have a question. You mentioned that you prefer not, I mean, you can use honey supers. It's safe for use with
right.
honey supers, but you prefer not to. And I just
Yeah.
missed your explanation why you
Yeah.
prefer not to.
Why is because you've increased that hive area, so the treatment area. So if
Oh.
you can keep those bees compact,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
that's the main reason. So it's not
So,
that you're going to have any contaminant or anything.
okay.
Yeah.
So is there is there any kind of this would be on the label. I didn't see it, but I think I heard somebody talk about it that if you, for example, have a 10 frame deep with a queen excluder on top and you have you're running mediums for honey, that your first medium above that brood box, your first medium honey super should be almost like a buffer box and you shouldn't
Right.
harvest from that. And you should
Yeah.
just take the ones above. Is should you have a buffer box?
You don't need a buffer box with this. Now, if you're using some of the harder chemicals, I would not put honey supers on with this treatment. You don't need the buffer box. But if you're a story and a half with the excluder, story and a half, 6 5/8 super that's up there, a medium or Illinois, whatever somebody calls it this day. But if you've got that honey super and an excluder in your brood nest, I would make sure that your strips are in the brood nest and the bees that are upstairs, I would just estimate them into that group. And, it's not that you're going to have in a honey super that's full, you're probably not going to have a frame of bees in there, really. You think it looks like they're full of bees, but if it's full of honey, there's not that much room in there. So.
Okay, so you can harvest that with not
Oh yeah,
not a
you can
buffer,
harvest it. You can actually harvest honey while the strips are on. So
right. Okay. Okay.
not a
Great.
problem.
Great. Is there more research coming out about the knockdown effects? Just because I mean, people still do seem to be confusing with aloe and cap and
I
all of it.
think I need to make sure that's put out. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things I'll be putting out definitely at AES. And that's one thing that we've been hearing a lot. We are doing more research. Actually, they're doing some research in Costa Rica, some down in, well, they were doing Washington. And yeah, we're constantly working and trying to find, we've had, all sorts of statements where, oh, people say, yeah, they don't work. Well, when we look and finally, see what's going on, it's normally the application that they did and the strip,
Improper application,
yeah,
you're saying.
improper application.
Uh-huh. Got it. Okay.
Commercial guys have already called me and said, I laid 2 strips on top and they didn't work. Well, it won't work that way. So.
Do you think that's because people are confusing it with the formic instructions, which
Well,
were
no, they're
no?
they're trying to do the easiest and fastest way.
Oh, I see.
I've been a commercial beekeeper for all my life, pretty much, and I understand if I uh, can throw something in real fast and easy, that's what we're going to do. But yeah.
Got it. Got it.
All right.
So David, it sounds like I've been making a mistake in the past with the ApiGuard of putting it on top of the hive. I really should
Yes,
be,
you have.
I should
And
be
actually,
putting it
you're
down in the
trying.
middle of the brood.
Yep, right down the middle into the brood nest. And by, laying it across the top, you're actually trying to make resistance because what happens there, Howard, is you're not getting the contact that needs to be done. And the old strips now, I'll admit, Dewey and I think Dewey stepped off already, but the old Apistan strips that originally came out under Section 18, you could put those, I swear you could hang them in a tree and still get mite drops, but they work forever. So they changed the plasticizer, and when they did, it didn't release anymore, right? So they controlled the release on it. So, all right.
Oh, can I just
Yep.
ask one more
Sure.
question? As far as storing the strip, I just want to, because this has come up too. Storing the strips, you just keep it in the same, you can keep it in that
Yes,
same
you
white
bet.
sort of plastic and then just wrap it up really
Yep.
well, like in another plastic bag or something, and
Yep.
that it'll keep it it'll keep it fresh.
Correct.
Okay.
We're trying to work on a reusable, resealable. Trouble is when you change your product, even though it's the packaging, you've got to go through the whole process again. So for that product, yes, sir.
But I guess from Regina's experience, you shouldn't try to vacuum seal it.
Yeah, I'm going to have to ask Paulo if he's ever had anybody vacuum seal the strips. That's interesting to me. So glad she brought that up. So,
Yeah.
yep.
We're innovative, us beekeepers. We've tried to figure everything out.
Beekeepers are all innovative, and they will. Even down here, it's funny being in Barbados, we have them here where they'll make beekeeping items like homemade smokers, or the guy came in with a feeder yesterday that he'd made because he saw one in a picture, and he made one out of plastic here, so inside the hive feeder. So I've had a great time tonight, and
Thank you so much, David. I so appreciate it.
Yep, hope to see everybody up at EAS. So, yep.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all so much for your time, for joining us tonight. Thank you again, David. It was wonderful hearing from you. You were so great. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Good one. Bye-bye.
Thank you, David. Good night.